Before the sun rose on Joe's second day, unbeknown to him, a meeting was taking place where he was the topic of discussion. This was not a meeting of teachers or parents, but a meeting of mentors, both caring and deeply interested in his tomorrow. This was happening in the cozy office space of Rare 9 Enterprises. Devante, Rare 9, and Lady Supreme gathered to discuss Joe's progress. They take a seat to get started. "Good day, gentlemen," she said. "You both have seen Joe's situation. He's a quiet boy, but the noise around him is beginning to get a little louder. Here's the thing. With him being in this new school atmosphere, there will be more tests that will come before him. Now, some of these tests will be easier than others. Some situations, just like the one he will encounter today, will have him in deep thought. He will think long and hard before his choice is clear. Now, gentlemen, please share with me your insights on what you have discovered." Devante starts off. "Well, I see that he's fighting shadows that he doesn't even recognize yet. Shadows like fear, loneliness, those things are the little foxes that hide in the small spaces between choices." "Yeah, I see that too, Devante. But even in that, he's still got some fire. Not the kind of fire that burns buildings, but the kind of fire that rebuilds character. We just have to make sure he finds it. But not only find it, but that he also recognizes the change that comes along with it." Lady Supreme chimes in with another point. "I hear you both clearly," she said, "and you're absolutely correct. Great observation, I must say. For Joe, the school year has just begun. His steps are slightly uncertain, but one thing for sure, his path is already formed. The special thing is that you've both been chosen to guide him on this journey. Subtly, at least for now. From the side. I believe that what you've shared with him already is a great start for what he needed for these initial tests." Devante responds, "Okay, so, you mean let the gentle whispers and memory flashbacks of what we've already shared reach him for now? This way we reach him through reflection, but at the same time not overwhelming him with any new revelation just yet?" Rare 9 takes a deep breath and says, "Yes, exactly, Devante. Joe, yeah, he's met us. But he doesn't really know us yet. I have a strong feeling that during his upcoming testing, he'll definitely remember what we have already shared with him. When they come, like Lady Supreme mentioned, he may wobble in thought a little, but I think Joe will be fine." "Exactly, Rare 9, says Lady Supreme. "Just continue to encourage him, without interfering with specific directives. His courage must belong to him. Let him find his voice and demonstrate what you've shared. Joe's a great young man, with a powerful voice. I see him taking a stand and doing what's right," she said, and this confirmed exactly what Devante felt. "I got it," he said. "I believe in Joe. From the moment I sensed his situation, I always knew he'd find his way. Perhaps the journey to becoming a natural-born leader will actually be sparked by those tests he'll face in the upcoming days." Rare 9 was in agreement with all that had been stated, so he replied, "He's definitely a leader. I see it. The tests of today will build a strong leader of tomorrow. Our assignment then remains, let's just make sure he recognizes change when it arrives." But Lady Supreme makes her final statement before signing off. "Do what you do best, gentlemen," she said. "Continue to prepare Joe to stand strong. Just remember, give him the space needed for now to make his own decisions and create the necessary change. I'm proud of what we've seen thus far. Great job, gentlemen. Thank you for all the time, support, and effort that you put in day after day and week after week to ensure the success of our youth. Thank you," she said. "And until the next time we speak, may all continue to be well with you. Bye for now." She then disconnected from the screen. It was under the watchful eye of these mentors that they had discussed Joe, the freshman boy who was yet to see his full potential. We know that every story of courage begins somewhere, and this one for Joe begins with belief in himself. Meanwhile, as Joe laid in bed, light continued to fill his room. Morning has come, the sun was shining, and with it was coming another test of Joe's strength and courage. Joe awakens to the sound of his alarm. The light felt different today. It felt less like pressure and more like promise. Much different than how he started out on yesterday. He sits up on the edge of his bed and takes a moment to gather his thoughts. Okay, he says. Today is day 2. So, let's do this. Moments later, he was dressed and was standing in the mirror. Confidence looked like a tie. He couldn't quite straighten. But every freshman fights a reflection before they face a crowd, and Joe was currently looking at his own. And Joe continued getting dressed. Things were finally coming together. At last, he said, as he sees his tie begin to straighten. Centered? Okay, cool enough. He spoke softly as he stood there reflecting in the mirror. He leaves his room and enters the kitchen. Morning smells of toast and the looks of quiet encouragement both greeted him. A big hug and a smile. Some goodbyes don't need many words. Seeing his mother's presence there to see him off is what he enjoyed, especially since she always prepared his favorite breakfast. Toast. With extra peanut butter. It's a power breakfast for a champion, she said. Joe replies, just what I wanted. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. I appreciate all that you do for me. Joe ate quickly, gave his mother a kiss, and then headed out the door to catch the bus. The sunshine wasn't holding back today. Its rays reflected through the bus windows as Joe sat there attentively. Yesterday, he slumped in silence. Today, he sat tall. A classmate sat next to him who started a conversation. Yo, you're the new guy, right? He asked. And Joe, maintaining his smile, looked over and said, Yeah, I'm Joe. The two continued in conversation as the bus completed its morning route to the school. Just then, the bus hissed to a stop. They have arrived. Once the door swung open, the students began to slowly step off. Joe is ready to face day 2. He stepped off the bus, with more confidence and determination. Meanwhile, on the inside, the hallway hummed with a language all of its own, the noise of lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, and voices that were layered like the sound of a staticky radio station whose DJ was mixing songs. Joe turns the corner en route to his locker, and was surprised by a classmate who was giving him a morning shout-out. Hey, Joe! They shouted. Joe turned around towards the classmate and responded. Hey, he said. Wow, Joe thought. They remembered my name? Between the bells and the chatter, he had now found a small island of calm. It was the space inside his locker. It was perfect. Joe took a moment to get things organized and grabbed what he needed for first period. He took a long stare inside and said to himself, keep it neat, keep it clean, keep it organized. After his friendly reminder, he then closes his locker and begins the route to his first period. Joe hadn't taken 5 steps down the hall before passing a group of seniors who were joking about ditching class. They approach him as he walks through their little human tunnel. Joe pauses, looks at them in disbelief, and begins to walk off. Several of the boys were yelling out, Hey, freshman, why don't you come skip first period with us? We'll make it worth your while, they said. Every hallway has a test. Sometimes it may come with a smile. Joe, shaking his head, replies, Nah, I'm good. Suit yourself, freshman, said one of the seniors, and he began to laugh with the others. Joe continued walking. At the far end of the corridor, a watchful eye caught what others missed. Approval didn't need applause, only a nod that said, keep going. It was Mr. Gunner. He had witnessed Joe being tested. As Joe approached closer, Mr. Gunner says to him, Good choice, son. Good choice, Joe replied. Thank you, and continued on his way. The school bell rang, so Joe walks into his first class of the day and takes a seat. He sat quietly and looked around until the teacher began. Inside this classroom, the answers weren't just written, they were earned. To Joe, it seemed as though words were echoing like applauses that only he could hear, like the sound of confidence, quiet yet simple and contagious. Joe and his classmates were given an assignment that he, along with many other students, had completed early. Now the time had come to check their answers. Joe didn't expect to be called on, but he was ready to respond. Joe, what's the capital of North Carolina? The teacher asked. Raleigh, Joe said. Without fear or hesitation, the bell now rings, and class was now over. Joe was walking to the next one. He couldn't help but notice that the hallway was alive with extra noise. But one corner shouted louder than the rest. Joe saw several girls standing and pointing at the wall. It was a wall of flyers for parties, games, notices, but one of the flyers spoke differently, and it was catching the attention of the students. A classmate begins to read the flyer as Joe passes by. Peer pressure. Stand strong. Lecture by Mr. Gunner. Joe takes a glance and kept walking. He turned the corner again and a group of girls were standing there talking about the flyer. One girl said, "Peer pressure talk? So lame," another one of the girls replied. "But it might be interesting though." And once again, Joe listened but kept walking. He wanted to escape all the negative noise about that flyer. Finally, he turned onto a less crowded and much quieter hallway. Joe continued on to his next class. Upon arriving, Joe found himself to be the first one there. As he sat catching his breath from the long walk, he began thinking about the flyer. He says to himself, "I wonder what the lecture is all about. More importantly, why are people talking so negatively about it?" His curiosity has now been piqued. Joe had questions. Joe leaves class and runs straight into Mr. Gunner, passing out flyers. Mr. Gunner's presence didn't demand attention, it commanded it. With it now came calm voices and the sound of confident steps. The hall had quickly softened around him. Even the noise itself seemed to listen. As he got closer, Mr. Gunner extended his hand out toward him while holding a flyer. "Take one, share one. It's not about being perfect. It's about being prepared," said Mr. Gunner. Joe pretended not to care. He hesitated, then reached out to take the flyer. His eyes immediately zoomed into the first two words. "Stand strong." The words looked heavy as if they knew what he was feeling inside. Joe held the flyer in his hand close to his chest. As he walked the hall, he heard others around him laughing and calling the flyer a joke. But the paper in his hand said otherwise, because somewhere inside, carrying it felt like strength. Joe stops and reads the flyer in depth. The jokes and chatter didn't stop. He continues to hear student after student speaking negative about the lecture. Nothing positive concerning the flyer was yet to be heard. Another student laughs and says, "A lecture? Please, let's hit the courts instead." Joe, now walking slowly, continued to study the flyer and asked himself, Why do I care so much?" Suddenly, the noise around him faded, and the voice of a friend returned. It was timely and needed, and for Joe, this silence now around him became fuel. It was the sound of Devante's voice that began to echo in his mind. "Don't let their noise drown out the right choice, Joe. Do what's in your heart to do. You got this." Joe whispered to himself. "I hear you, Deante. Yeah, I really hear you. Thanks for the fuel. It's just what I needed." Courage can begin as a question. Sometimes you have to test it out loud. It's now lunchtime, and Joe enters the cafeteria. His voice stayed calm, but his heart wavered. Courage can sometimes sound a lot like curiosity. And for Joe, his curiosity was generating more courage that he didn't expect to shine so strongly in the moment. It was all the questions he had about the flyer. He walked in wanting answers. Joe wanted to hear feedback. So he walked around the cafeteria until he found a spot to begin at. He found a table of some classmates, so he stopped and asked, "Hey, are you guys thinking about going to this Stand Strong thing?" One replied, "Man, no way. That sounds boring." Another responded and said, "Nah, that's teacher stuff. Surely." The sound of more negativity wasn't encouraging, but curiosity was leading Joe, and he wasn't about to stop searching. The cafeteria sound continued to buzz like a storm of voices and trays. Yesterday, Joe would have drifted through it like a ghost. Today, he's on a quest, seeking the opinions of his peers. Those no's didn't stop him from seeking a yes. Joe went to another table. This time he sat down. His approach was a little different. He started with a little conversation before he popped his questions. "Now's the time to ask," he thought him, so he does. "Hey," he said, "let me ask you all a question. Are any of you thinking about going to that Stand Strong lecture? This time, the responses were a little different. The entire table of students confirmed that they were all going. This broke the ice and allowed for more conversation. One girl asked him, "Yo, what do you do for fun? You play ball?" Joe replied, "I do sometimes. Mostly, though. I just stay in the house." "Sounds like you'll fit right in, man," the male student replied. "You know, since we're all planning to attend the meeting tomorrow. It looks like you found your tribe," he said jokingly. Finally, a positive response was heard. Joe sat there smiling and continued in conversation. And after lunch, Joe finished up his remaining classes of the day. The dismissal bell had rung, and this was today's last locker visit. The hallway appeared empty as he made a stop. It was just him, a few students, his locker, and a piece of paper. You guessed it. It was the flyer that was being gripped tightly in his hand. With his mind full of questions, he stood there, staring into his locker until the echo sound of footsteps began to fade. Sure, it was the end of the day, but Joe's mind was still heavy about tomorrow's lecture. Joe now had a bus to catch, but with curiosity leading the way. He decided to walk past the auditorium on his way there. He wanted to get a feel of the atmosphere inside. As he stood outside the auditorium doors, he questioned himself. Why am I questioning this lecture?" he said, standing there in thought. Sometimes belief travels ahead of the person that it belongs to, and for Joe, he was about to hear a dose of it. As Joe stood there preparing to look inside, he expected the auditorium to be empty. But as he began to open the door, the sound of voices could be heard coming from the inside. His intention wasn't to eavesdrop, but just as he was about to walk away, he heard his name being spoken of. This caused Joe to stand still for a moment and listen to the conversation. Truly, he didn't want to miss the bus, but now confusion hit him. Who was this? And why were they talking about him? With this being a new school for Joe, he didn't know many people, but there was something about this voice. It sounded really familiar to him. As he continued to listen, he heard a male voice say, "Yeah, I see his potential. That new student Joe. He's really got something special, but doesn't even quite know it yet. He has the looks of a great leader." Hearing this instantly brought up another familiar voice to Joe's mind. It was the words spoken from Rare 9 on yesterday. They were now reflecting as echoes in his ear. When the mind drifts, it often returns to where courage was first planted. For Joe, it was in the conversation he had with Rare 9. Joe begins to hear these words. "Every road has two turns, Joe. You already know which one leads to growth. Just remember, the answers you need are already on the inside of you. Tap in, Joe, just tap in. There is greatness inside of you." He stood there for a moment, taking it all in. "Thanks for the reminder, Rare 9, said Joe. It was in the glow of this memory that truth stood beside him, quiet, powerful, and so unshakable. The school bell had screamed freedom minutes before, but for Joe, he didn't rush to leave. This school day had ended, but not for all the lessons the day would yield. The weight of decision was still there, but now it pressed softly, but still firmly on his heart. Choice was calling. Joe begins to walk away slowly. Still in thought, he mumbled to himself. "So it looks like my decision is, he said. Ah, shucks. Let's not forget that I have a bus to catch." Joe walked out the building, now focused on catching the bus. The second day was supposed to end easy, but just ahead, the group of seniors waiting outside the building had other plans for him. They stood there, knowing he would pass by them en route to the bus ramp. These boys weren't giving up easy. Their trickery didn't work on Joe yesterday, so they had conjured up another plan for today. You see, temptation always sounds friendly, until you listen closely. And while listening, real intentions can be revealed. Joe saw the group standing there as he drew near. "Yelp," he said. "I knew it. These are the same guys that approached me on yesterday. What do they want now?" Joe thought to himself. "Hey, Joe! Bet you're too scared to skip with us tomorrow. It was only the second day of school." Surely they had to be joking, he thought. Joe, looking him in the eyes, and replied, "No, not scared. I'm just not stupid." "So, come on, live a little," the boy replied. Joe shook his head in disbelief and said firmly, "Respect starts with me. If I don't respect myself, who will?" The senior wasn't expecting that reply from Joe. He angrily responds back to him. "Whatever, man," he said. His tone didn't bother Joe. However, it did spark this question. "What is it with you guys? You all approached me yesterday before school and pretended to befriend me. I told you that I wasn't interested. Did you guys not hear me? Please do me a favor. Respect me by leaving me alone. Thanks." Once again, the group of seniors were very surprised about what Joe has said to them. So far, Joe wasn't folding to the pressure. But Joe didn't wait for any additional discussion either. He just politely turned and walked away. His journey to the bus ramp now continued. After all, he had a bus to catch. Every voice shakes before it steadies. And just like that, power had changed hands quietly and completely. Joe wasn't afraid to stand his ground. Finally, with the bus in sight, Joe gets in line to board it. He stands there patiently, clutching his Stand Strong flyer as his inner voice is speaking. Everyone's headed home, but something tells me my day still isn't finished yet. To Joe, choice was calling louder than comfort. He's now aboard the bus and is about to take his seat. The bus felt easier this time, the air lighter and the noise less heavy. As he entered, a senior boy whispers to another, "Hey, slip this paper in his bag. Now we'll see what he's really made of." Sometimes temptation doesn't shout, it slides in, silently and unannounced. The group of senior boys stood by, looking to make sure that the note was planted. Once they saw that it was, they turned and walked away. The thumbs up was all they needed. They didn't like how Joe was standing up to them. No freshman had ever spoken up to them in this way before. They were determined to get Joe to break and give in to them. Finally, Joe takes a seat. But just when he thought the day had ended in peace, he unzips his backpack and notices a folded piece of paper that wasn't there before. He hesitates, unfolds it, and its words would test everything he had learned from the mentors Devante and Rare 9 that he met on yesterday. Joe stared at the note, his pulse quickening with every bump of the bus ride. He scans over it. The words were simple, but heavy. Who wrote this? And why? Joe began to read. "Hey, freshman, we know you really want to hang with us. Don't even think about going to that boring meeting on tomorrow. We're giving you one more chance to hang with us. Meet us after school instead. Besides, only lame people will be attending that lecture anyway. You're not lame, are you, Joe? We'll see. Finally, don't tell anyone about this note. Not one word about our plan. Remember, be there or be square. It's signed. You know who." Joe's heart raced. Should I say anything about the note? Or do I keep it to myself, he thought. He gently tucks it back inside, but not without making more conversation with himself. "They just won't take no for an answer," he said. "What is wrong with them? What is it?" Just then, the bus halted. It's time for Joe to get off. His house was only steps away from bus stop, but Joe was now at home, where victory met reality. With a folded note in his backpack, creased like a secret. Its weight had felt as if it were heavier than a brick. But when Joe walked through the door, the world felt lighter again. Just as it did this morning, the sights and smells in the kitchen had captured his attention. Joe says, "Hey, Mom, I'm so happy to see you. It smells so good in here. Is that what I think it is?" he asked. She smiled. "You know it," she said. "It's a pizza and salad night. You earned it, champ. It's just about ready, so get yourself cleaned up and come take a seat. Your dad will be joining us any moment now," she said. In that small kitchen, everything felt simple again, safe, like the day hadn't tried to test him. The dinner came with laughter and light talk, the kind that hides the day's worries under food and smiles. Pizza was a favorite of Joe's. It was the perfect meal for the type of day he had. As dinner was being served, his parents began to question him about his day. His dad asked first, How was day 2, son? You still surviving freshman life? Joe shrugs his shoulders and replied, Yeah, better than yesterday. But something weird happened on the bus. Weird how, honey? His mom asks. Joe continued to explain. Some of the older guys slipped this note in my bag. He pauses. It says, Don't chicken out, Joe. Meet us there or be square. He slides the folded note onto the table for them to see. Joe's dad, now puzzled at what he just heard, asks for more details. Wait. And what do they want? Joe responded. It's about skipping class on tomorrow. You see, there is a lecture with the freshman guidance counselor. Most of the students have been talking negatively about it, calling it lame and boring, among other things, including not even attending at all, his mom gently asks. And what do you think about that, honey? Joe expresses his intent to his parents. I don't know, he said. Part of me wants to just ignore them. But the other part of me keeps thinking, what if I do ignore them, and they continue to come after me for it? His dad responds supportively. Joe, you've got a good head on your shoulders, son. You already know the difference between right and wrong. We trust that although you're being pressured with a challenge, the correct decision will be made, his mom added. And we do trust you to make the right call. Just always remember, son, you don't need to impress anyone to prove who you are. Joe agreed, nodding his head, and softly replied, Yeah, I know. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. You two are the best, and your support means a lot. Dinner had come with comfort, not lectures, not warnings, just support, the kind that says you're ready, even if you don't feel it yet. His dad, smiling at Joe, said, All right, superhero, eat up, before your mom thinks you don't like her cooking. Mom, looking at Dad laughingly, and says, He never leaves a crumb. And for me, that's my proof that he enjoys it. They all began to laugh at her words. Now it was time to stand up and give Joe a group hug to seal their encouragement before he went upstairs to his room. Okay, champ, they said. Give us a hug. Come on. You got this. They smiled and held each other tight. It was a perfect hug to express their love for their son, and within it was also Joe's love for them. Once upstairs, he put on his pajamas and got in bed under the covers. He sat up with the wrinkled note in his hand, still creased like a secret. Peer pressure doesn't always come in crowds. It can also fit on a single piece of paper, exactly like the one he was holding. Joe was now upstairs where the quiet had waited for him. With the note in hand, Joe continued looking at it. The words, even smaller now, but still reflecting powerfully. He questions himself. What am I supposed to do with this? He looks down and his eyes lock in on these words. Don't chicken out, Joe. Meet us there. Or be square. The silence in Joe's room continued and sleep seemed to be avoiding him. The note wasn't far away. It sat there on the bed, its words still echoing enough to hinder his sleep. Courage sounded a lot like questions. But even questions have a voice. Looking at the reflection of himself in the mirror, Joe began to ask softly, Why can't they just let me be? Joe had looked long enough until something clicked. It was in that moment that he understood exactly what was needed. With his head now bowed and his hands folded together, he began to pray quietly. God, help me. God, help me. To do the right thing. Help me. To stand strong, even when it's hard. Help me to trust you at all times and in all situations. Help me to show your light through my words, my thoughts, and through my actions. Let my life be a real example of what it looks like to trust you. I know you see all things. You see the pressure I'm facing at school. I pray, God, that you will change the heart of those seniors. Show them the good that they have inside and how to apply it, and help them to stop focusing on doing wrong. And God, thank you for my parents, and thank you for loving me. Amen. Stillness came after Joe prayed. He sat there after a silent pause and once more began speaking softly. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." It was the 23rd Psalm from the Bible. Although his grandma used to read this psalm to him some years back, it served as the perfect reminder for the present dilemma. The stillness continued. And in that stillness, courage had found its footing. This had become a motivational moment for Joe. He sat up and began to recite some positive affirmations. He spoke them soft but firm. "I am stronger than pressure. I am made to stand tall. I choose respect over fear. I won't follow what's wrong, even if it means that I stand alone. I'm walking in purpose, not in popularity." Each word echoed back, like a truth waiting to be claimed. And in that stillness, courage settled into his heart, quietly and steady and real. The house breathed calm, and now, so did he. Now, after Joe's prayers and affirmations, he has now found himself completely wrapped up in the night's quietness. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean silence, it means peace. In that still room, courage was no longer an idea. It was alive. It was breathing through every word he had spoken. It was evident by the smile seen on his face. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to meet it. Standing strong doesn't begin in the crowd. It begins alone, in the dark, when no one's watching. And somewhere between saying his prayers and affirmations, Joe had found something bigger than fear. He found words that reminded him not to fear, even during times of testing. Those were words that comforted him and reminded him to always trust God. Sleep had came slow, but with it came peace. And finally, Joe had drifted off. Stay tuned to see what happens next. Does Joe actually attend the lecture? Or will he give in to the peer pressure, heated or... Is this the beginning of Joe's getting his voice? We'll see, as the adventures continue, because the mentors are still at work. Rare 9 and Devante wrap things up for the evening. After a full day in the office, they walk out to get in their car. And as they drive off, they begin to sing the theme song of their organization. Never settle for less, when you can achieve the best.
Never settle for less, when you can achieve the best.
Indeed, that is a message for all of us. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Tune in next week as the adventures of Rare 9 continues.